Greetings, my lords. Jellord here. I thought I'd come at you with a little talk about the Nintendo Direct that just dropped because I have a few thoughts on it. And I thought I'd switch it up a little bit and do this video in front of ye old game shelf. Maybe you recognize a couple handhelds back there, a couple titles that pop out. If you can see any of them, with the glare of the light here. But whatever, it is what it is. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how, everybody's reception online to this Nintendo Direct. I gotta say, a lot of crybabies out there, man. Holy shit. Everybody, sometimes I think that, nothing can please gamers, and I don't know. I think about this a lot, but it's like talking about gamers as a whole, like as as a culture, I guess there's that a lot of people like to generalize about gamers and like they're all the same, which I don't think that's true at all. I think depending on what you're into, like you can be a completely different kind of gamer, a different kind of fan, really, because it's like being a fan of anything. Like they talk about Star Wars fans are so toxic and all of this shit. Like they try to categorize Star Wars fans as like these terrible people, but that's just a categorization based on one IP. But they don't do that as much with video games. I find like they used to a little bit, where it's like when there was more of a console war sensation going on, people would be like, "Oh, you're a PlayStation person, or you're an Xbox person, or you're a Nintendo person," and they would kind of categorize you based on like what console you supported in some ways, not necessarily like what IPs you were into. Um, but nowadays they just kind of lump everybody who plays video games together, is what I've noticed. They just call everybody's gamers. And I don't really think that that's a good way to categorize everybody, because everybody's so different in the way that they perceive games and receive games. Like I was watching a content creator this morning, and this is when it started to dawn on me, like how much everybody's just like crying about this Nintendo Direct and just shitting all over it. And I honestly, I thought it was a good Direct, man. There was like a lot of titles that spoke to me that I was excited about. Um, I'll say like the content creator I was watching, I won't say specifically who it was, but like he's the type of dude. He's more into like your classic Nintendo games. I don't even think he's much of a Zelda fan, to be honest. But he's more the kind of person who's into like wrestling games and more of the more into like Mario titles, like more classic shit, basically. So he's not super receptive to like indies. He's not really receptive to a lot of remakes, particularly of like JRPGs and stuff like that. But for anybody who's a JRPG fan, like I think that this direct was firing on all cylinders. Personally, like with the Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remake, I think that that's a pretty sick drop. Um, I recently played through. Let's see if I got it sitting at the top over here. I think I do. I recently played through Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color here, which I had a blast going through those two games, and I'm currently playing through Dragon Quest 3 um, on the Game Boy Color. I didn't pick up the remaster, partly because like I wanted to play through original first, and also I wasn't like a terribly huge fan of just some of the changes they made, like trying to push modern sensibilities into the game and trying to put, just infusing gender studies into everything. It's ridiculous to me, like that kind of shit. It's like if you want to make a new game and incorporate aspects of that, and you want to like have gender bending themes and stuff like that in there, that's cool. Like if that's what your game is going to be about, cool. You know, if it's like a game like Cyberpunk where like changing your body and shit like that is part of the game's lore and stuff, that's cool. But it's like Dragon Quest doesn't need that shit. And you know, agree to disagree, but that's where I'm at with that. Anyway, having recently played through Dragon Quest 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Color, I also recently, within the last year, played through it on the NES. And I just picked up Dragon Quest 2 for Dragon Warrior, it was called Dragon Warrior on the NES. I picked that up for a good price. I'm going to play the back through that on the original NES too, because I've been on a kick ever since I modded the Hyperkin and got myself a wireless Nintendo controller. Being to play able to play all those games on a modern display has just got me on a total kick. I've been buying a bunch of NES games too, so I'm having a lot of fun with that, kind of reliving the NES era and picking up all the games that I liked when I was younger, and also just revisiting the ones I already owned. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. Um, but yeah, Dragon Quest 1 and 2 remake, awesome. I thought it was an awesome way to start the direct. Personally, it was cool to see what they were going to look like. I'm excited, particularly for the original Dragon Warrior, to see what kind of maybe like changes they made to that game. And just to see the main character and more high fidelity graphics, you know, than the original. I think it'll be cool. I'm excited about that. Um, then they moved on, and one thing I was pumped about is like they dropped some Gradius love, man. It's been a long time since we got some Gradius love, and I know that shmup fans are kind of a dying breed out there, but I'm a huge fan of shmups. Like I got my Radiant Silvergun uh, remaster deluxe edition from Limited Run sitting over there. I threw down some cash for that, man. I bought it for myself for my birthday, which was wild because that shit took almost a full year to get to me. I actually had to send a letter to I like sent those guys an email because I was like, bro, like how the hell is this taking over a year after I've ordered it for you guys to get me this fucking box full of Burger King toys in the game that I want? To be real with you guys, that's probably the last um, limited run, whatever special edition that I'm ever going to buy, because the plastic garbage that they send along with the game, it's just low quality trash. And like the retro cases and shit that they stick the games in. It's like, oh, it looks like a Sega Saturn case. It's like, get the hell out of here, dude. Not, that shit's so stupid and cheap. It's like the case showed up broken. I had to like I got another case from a repo to replace the broken case that it showed up in. It's so stupid. So I'm from now on Unlimited Run, I'm just buying the actual, like just the game in the box. I don't give a shit about any of the special edition stuff. Anyway, I was pretty excited. Excuse me. I was pretty excited. Excuse me. I was pretty excited about Gradius getting some love. Also, another couple titles. Ooh, shit. Patapon 1 and 2. Pretty excited about those coming to the Switch. I got my original copies for the PSP yet. I think it's cool having those come to the Switch because those games were originally designed for handheld. So I think it's pretty cool that they're coming back to a handheld console. Like, granted, you could play those games. You can get them on PlayStation Network for like $5 a piece most of the time, which is totally worth it. But I'd be excited to get a physical version on the Switch just to add to the collection up here. Yeah, I'm a little bit sick. That's why I'm kind of like sneezing and whatever. And there's terrible pollen going on where I live. But yeah, I was pretty pumped about Patapon 1 and 2. That's a fun little rhythm game with like pretty deep RPG elements to it. If you've never played, takes a little getting used to. I'm not like a super big fan of rhythm games in general, so like it takes a little getting used to. I'm more of a fan of the role playing elements and just building up your little army and their equipment and stuff like that, because it's very much about collecting materials and crafting new weapons and crafting new characters, like new Patapon to use for battle. Uh, I've always had a blast. I haven't finished either of the games just because Like I said, I'm not a huge rhythm fan, but this might be an opportunity. I've gotten about halfway through both Patapon 1 and 2. I got a bit further in Patapon 2, maybe a bit more than halfway through. But there is kind of a grindy aspect to those games if you're trying to get all the best Patapon warriors. But whatever the case, I still think they're sick games, and I'd be excited to be able to get like one cart with both of them on there. We also got to see a little bit more about Fantasy Life, the girl who steals time or whatever. I'm really interested to see. I'm not 100. I'm pretty sure that you have to play as like a static character. You have to play as a girl in the game, and I'm not too pumped about that. The first game was called Fantasy Life. Like the whole idea was inventing a little fantasy life for yourself and picking whatever job. It wasn't fantasy play as a girl. I don't give a shit to have the option to play as a girl, but to be forced to be a female character in a game about inventing a fantasy life, I'm not into it. Like it just doesn't. I'll play plenty of games with female characters. I don't give a shit. I just finished Ender Lilies and Ender Magnolia recently. I got physical copies of both of those, which are kind of a little tougher to come by at this point. But I loved both of those games. Didn't care that the main characters were female because they weren't trying to girl boss those girls out. Like they were just, the first game you're just a little girl who's being defended by spirits. Basically, those are all your moves. The only thing you can do is like dodge. Eventually, you get like a better version of your dodge, but you're definitely not girl boss status. And Ender Magnolia, you play as a young girl again who uses homunculi just like the spirits. She she's definitely not any, there's no girl bossing tropes there. And that's not to say the new fantasy life like you're going to be a girl boss, but man, i'm I'm a dude, I'm a grown man, and I'm just like kind of tired of playing as girls, and every other game they put out it's a female protagonist. And I get the whole toxic like masculinity fucking patriarchy shit that a lot of theorists, if you want to call them that, want to push nowadays. But I'm like totally sick of that shit. And a lot of the times when they're trying to shove like a female protagonist down my throat, that's all it's going to take for me to be completely the fuck out of there. And hey, agree to disagree. I got nothing against people who like that shit. I just think that they need to like have a lot of the game industry needs to have a come to Jesus moment and realize that like at least 70, and I would wager to say 80% of gamers are dudes. uh that's just the reality. Like I don't set the rules. It's been a male dominated hobby, and it's still a male dominated hobby, and they're trying really hard to get women, they're trying to really hard to represent women in it, but it's like it's still a male dominated hobby. And when a game doesn't do well, in a lot of cases it's because it's a lot of females in the gaming industry who don't understand men and what men want. So they're trying to cater to women, female sensibilities, and it just misses the mark for a lot of dudes. They don't end up buying it, and then it's like surprise Pikachu face when a game doesn't do well. Like they have no idea why it didn't do well, right? But yeah, like another game it's good to get some information on, although I think I might skip Fantasy Life 2 or whatever. I probably won't end up getting that one or bothering with it because I've got plenty of games to play. I don't need to like debate with myself whether or not I can overcome the fact that I have to play some little girl in this game when it's called Fantasy Life and you're creating your own fantasy life. You're not fucking fantasy little girl, whatever. But yeah, Gradius, I'm pumped to have that collection on there. We haven't Nobody's talked about Gradius in forever. Patapon 1 and 2. Kind of a little disappointed that the third Patapon wasn't on there. These games aren't big, so I don't really see a reason not to have it on there. And I don't foresee them releasing another I don't know. I don't foresee them releasing it again. What are they going to release the third one on the Switch too? Maybe we'll get a digital version. Who knows? We might not even get a physical version. I probably won't buy Patapon 1 and 2 if it doesn't come out on some kind of physical form. Um, But yeah, so far to me, that's pretty. Like, even if that was all the new shit that they showed me with between Patapon and Gradius and stuff, and Metroid, and they showed Metroid Prime 4, which everybody was clamoring about Metroid Prime 4. I don't understand where the hype went. Like, I'm like seeing people's comments online and shit. And they're like, man, that Nintendo Direct was weak as hell. Blah blah blah. It was so bad. And I'm just like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, first of all, if you're a JRPG fan, like they had that Devil Summoner remake. I never played that one, but it's an action RPG, so that should appeal to more normies, I guess. As far as like Devil Summoner goes, I'm not a huge. I'm kind of sick of action RPGs. That's just where I'm at because like they seem to think that that's what everybody wants now because everybody's a mouth breathing butt fucking retard apparently, and they can't play a game that involves like any kind of strategic thinking. They just want to smash a button, like and bash the enemy until they're dead and roll dodge to the end of time. But I'm kind of falling off a lot with action RPGs, and I'd rather with a lot of them they just return to form. I'd rather play a game that involves thinking more than just blind reaction times. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I dislike games with blind reaction times and shit. I'm like a huge Armored Core fan. Armored Core 6 is about as reaction time as anything can get. There's no invincibility frames, Like that game's intense. I love it. I loved it. Love them all. Um, but for me, there's a time and a place. And if you're going to take an RPG classic and you're going to butcher it down to just the generic ass action RPG, because they all end up being the same. I loved Visions of Mana that recently came out just because it was a Mana game. But at the end of the day, it was just another action RPG, dime a dozen. You played one, you played them all. There's really not a lot they do with action RPGs that set them apart from each other. There could be some bells and whistles and mechanics, and maybe the characters specific to the IP that could bring some interest to it. But beyond that, like it doesn't do anything. You're looking all the way back at like PlayStation 2 era, and you're still getting the same feels out of action RPGs. Like the genre is not really evolving, and most of the times anything that's trying to be passed as an evolution is something like Final Fantasy 16, which is just like a lot of spectacle and bombast, basically disguising a button mash of just hitting the same shit over and over until the enemy's dead, and you get a lot of flash and awe, but you're not doing much with the controller. That's just me. Going forward though, like there was a lot of I didn't give a shit about the Tamagotchi games. Whatever. I know there's a crowd for that though. I could see in people's comments and stuff on other videos they were pretty pumped for those games. So good on them. Um, I'm excited about Shadow Labyrinth. I want to check out. I like this new spin on Pac-Man, even though of course everybody's shitting all over it. They shit all over it since the secret level debut. They're like, "This is Pac-Man. This is weird." It's like, come on, man. Can like they're always talking about evolving IPs and all of this shit, and it's just like as soon and like it's like as soon as they try something new with an old IP, everybody starts crying. And then if they release something in the same vein that's true to an old IP, people start crying that nothing has changed. It's like a catch 22 so much of the times with like gamers, and that's part of why like it's weird to me categorizing everybody as gamers because there's such a broad spectrum in gaming of what people are interested in. And I think a lot of the times there's like confusing signals because you'll get these gamers who don't give a shit about certain genres or IPs who are chiming in to talk shit, and they get mistaken as the greater crowd. What it's like when people try to say, "Oh, that the game's not for you," a lot of the time that's self-defeating bullshit. But there is some truth to that. Like Patapon isn't for everybody. People shitting on that. It's a rhythm game with RPG elements. It's not for everybody, but the people that love Patapon really fucking love Patapon. I'm one of those people. The people that like Gradius, for instance, People, but generally speaking, by and large, don't give a shit about Gradius. But I'm one of the people. I love shmups. I'm a big fan of Gradius, R-Type, a lot of the classics, the Darius games, or Darius, depending on what circles you're talking in. But like, I'm a fan of those older titles and stuff. And you'll get newer gamers shitting all over it, and they get mistaken as the primary target audience. A lot of the times, these people who are not the ones buying these IPs and never were, and they're not interested. They need to chime in with their bullshit and negativity and toxic horse shit, to shit all over certain IPs and certain genres. When it's The reality is they just wanted to see the game that they were hoping for, and because something else was there, they have to take a big shit on it. It's like, I saw people talking about how weak the direct was, and I just made a comment. I'm like, man, everybody's being a bunch of crybabies about this direct. It's like, you even got Metroid Prime 4. And like I was saying, like, what happened to the hype for Metroid Prime 4? That shit is apparently out the window. Everybody was almost shitting their pants waiting for some information on Metroid Prime 4. We got a trailer just now that showed us more information than we've had up until now, the entire time we've been waiting for it. Like, now Samus has psychic abilities. That's cool. I'm interested to see what they do with that. You can bend your shots midair. That's pretty cool. Some interesting stuff that they're adding to the game, and it's supposed to be coming out on the Switch, man. Like, we're gonna get it before the Switch 2. So I'm not detecting any hype for Prime 4 now. It's almost like the game's come out and people have lost interest, and it's not even out yet, which blows me away. And I guess people were really waiting for like Zelda Oracle of the Seasons and whatever the companion title was, for that one. But they really wanted a remake of those Zelda games, and because they didn't see that shit, they're like, oh, the whole direct is fucking garbage because we didn't get our remake of a Game Boy Zelda game. It's like, dude, just because your one game that you wanted didn't come to the direct doesn't mean the whole direct was trash and you just throw it all out. But I guess if that's the kind of gamer you are and the only thing you wanted was another Zelda game, then I guess it was a garbage direct. And the same goes for any other titles that I guess you were clamoring for, that one title you were looking for. Whatever. But like I said, I don't want to drag this on too long, but Patapon 1 and 2, Gradius, the Devil Summoner remaster is cool. Fantasy Life, we'll see what happens. I'm not super pumped. Metroid Prime 4, awesome. And the big one for me was they just like basically shadow dropped Saga Frontier 2 remastered. Now I really want a physical edition of it, but I'm probably gonna double dip and buy the digital version as well as getting a physical version once it comes out, just because I really like to support these games. I did the same thing with Front Mission 1 and 2. I bought digital versions and I bought the physical versions because they didn't come out till later. But I don't care. I'll double dip on these games. I did it with the original Saga Frontier as well because the physical version didn't drop right away. I'll double dip with these games because I want them to keep making these games. I want them. I want to. I want to do my part to show that there's interest, and hopefully some other people that are diehard fans do the same. But yeah, Saga Frontier 2, that was a huge drop for me. Metroid Prime 4 looks sick. They showed us some of the game mechanics, which I'm pretty pumped about that. Patapon 1 and 2, I hope they get a physical release of that. I'll be buying it if they do. Gradius Collection. I got a ton of shmups on the Switch. The Switch is a good console for shmups if you like shmups, man. Like, you can get a lot of cool shit on the Switch. Like, for instance, I still have a sealed copy of R-Type Final 2 on the Switch, which they didn't release R-Type Final 3 on there. That's just on the PS5, but that's also an awesome game. And there's a ton, like the Taito collections are on there. There's the Darius HD, uh, Darius, what was it? G Darius. There we go. I always call it G Darius, so that's why I was struggling to remember. They released that physically on there, and it's available. I'm like, you can get it for cheap as hell. That's an excellent fucking game. Um, there's a ton of other shmups. I'm not going to try to name them all right now, but yeah, the Switch is a great console for shmups. I'm happy to see Gradius come there. And the biggest thing for me was the Saga Frontier 2 drop. the Dragon Quest games. Like if you're a JRPG fan, this was a great direct. But you get all these people who didn't get their one specific game there, or they didn't get Oracle of the Seasons. Like, oh, whatever, man. Like it'll come, and if you really need to scratch that itch, it's on the Switch. It's on the Switch online service. You can play both the games on there. So go play back through it again. Like you play you already paid for it. So I know that people wanted to see like remasters of those like in the same vein as Link's Awakening, and maybe we'll get those at some point, but I'm not going to hold my breath, and I'd be surprised to even learn if they're in the works, to be real. But there's so much to play right now that I kind of I'm don't really I'm not here to like pitch a fit if I'm not getting a bunch of new games out of Nintendo before the Switch is done. I'm happy with the lineup. I'm happy with my collection, and honestly, they are probably going to do the same thing that they did that other companies like Sony did with the PS4. They kept releasing games even after their new console came out for the PS5. So much so to the point where people were complaining, man, and I was kind of pissed off too for how few titles were exclusive. It's like I could have kept my PS4 and just not bought a PS5, and I only would have missed out on a handful of titles, which I thought was pretty lame. And I think, dude, they're not going to just like give up the user base. I don't know how many consoles it is, but it's like it's approaching like the hundreds of millions of consoles. Like maybe not that high, but I know it's like well past the tens of millions of consoles out there, people owning Switches. That is such a huge user base that I don't think that they're going to throw all their eggs in one basket right away for the Switch 2, especially with the way that like uh everybody's tight on money and shit like that right now with the way that the world is working out and the cost of living and shit. Like I think the Switch 2 is going to sell well, but I don't think it's going to like turn into this giant user base like they already have established in the original Switch. So I definitely think that any titles that don't need that extra processing power, especially indie titles and stuff like that, they're going to still be dropping games for the Switch. That's just it'd be stupid if they didn't, because that's going to be like a lot of lost sales to try to bank on how many people own the Switch 2 when it immediately releases, you know. In any case, I just wanted to hop on here and give my two thoughts on the Nintendo Direct, and I do think that people are just it's become a catch 22 in gaming where you do one thing and everybody's unhappy, you do the opposite and everybody's unhappy. And I think that one of the problems is like I think that there's like a lot of gamers that are kind of tourists into different genres, but not even tourists, they're just commentators. Like games that they'll never buy, games that they're never going to play, games that they're not interested in, they want to come in and talk about those games and shit on them. And I run in this a lot. Like as a bartender, I'll be talking about games with people, and they'll tell me like this a game is really cool, and I'll ask them like, "Oh, did you finish it or whatever?" And then they'll tell me they didn't even play the game, and it's like, dude, why are you talking about this game like you played it and you think it's cool, but you haven't even played it? And I think there's like a lot of that going on. I think like when people don't see the very specific title that they want, they suddenly want to give their 2 cents on a lot of other stuff that they would never have been interested, that they're not going to buy, that they've never played. So it's just like, I mean, people can do whatever they want. It's a free country and we have freedom of speech. You can talk about whatever you want, but there's a lot of disingenuous motherfuckers out there who they get off on just spreading their fucking vitriol and toxic horse shit. They just get off on shitting on stuff that people like. They like to see people upset. They like to get reactions out of people. You know, it's like even my comment where I was talking about people being crybabies about the direct and like nothing will please them. It's like one of the first comments I got was like, "You must have really low standards, man." It's like, dude, what are you even talking about? And what kind of astronomical standards do you need? We got more information on Metroid Prime 4 than we've ever had. And that's not good enough, man. You needed Oracle of the Ages and Oracle of the Seasons to you needed that, otherwise the whole direct was fucking garbage. Give me a break, dude. And like no standards. You don't even know what you're talking about. And half the time, the people who leave these comments, if they're not bots, they're fucking zoomers who can't even afford to buy more than 2 or 3 games in a year. So it's like, how can you sit here and try to claim that somebody has low standards when like you can't even afford to buy any of these games to establish your own baseline for having standards in the first place? It's fucking crazy to me. And like most of these kids are just playing their shit, playing like free games by they're just pirating games, man. They're not the people that you want to even be marketing to because they don't have any money. For the love of God, it's like in my experience, especially as a bartender dealing with younger people, most of these kids and shit don't even have jobs until they're like in their early 20s. A lot of them, I'm like, we just hired this kid who's like, he's like 22 and it's really obvious he's never had a job before. He has no idea how to like work normal shit. It blows my mind. Doesn't know how to work. Like, and I think a lot of these people online who are these keyboard warriors, man, like a lot of them haven't had real jobs. A lot of them hardly have any disposable income, and but they have a lot of disposable opinions. They're out there giving their opinion on everything that they're never going to buy, never going to play. They're just there to shit on it to see if you'll react. And I guess my advice for that is like just don't give them the response that they want. Just don't give them the response that they want. It's better to like stop them in their tracks and ask them like a funny meme phrase like you mad bro, that you know usually you can shut them down like that, like it doesn't even matter. But yeah, I'm gonna say I give the Nintendo Direct like a B plus, especially if you're a JRPG fan. You're eating good with this one. And yeah, not to mention I don't know where the fuck the hype went for Metroid Prime 4. That just disappeared, I guess. Nobody gives a shit. That apparently that's old news and it hasn't even come out. But in any case, I think that's going to be it for me. I don't want to go too long. Most of my videos end up being like 30 minutes, and ain't nobody got time for that. But we'll see. I got some new subscribers recently. I wanted to thank everybody who watched my Armored Core video for setting up analog sticks on the Armored Core Classics that just dropped on the PlayStation Network. I'm pretty pumped. I got like almost 400 views on that video. That's been my best video so far, and I've managed to accrue like almost 15 new subscribers, which is awesome. Once I get to 50 subscribers, I'll be able to live stream without playing games. So I'm really pumped about that. I'll be able to have these talks and maybe have a live chat going with a few people so we can have a little back and forth. And I don't necessarily have to be playing a game. So I'm really excited. I think I just need 3 more subscribers to get there. And I think I'll get them in the next couple. I'll get them in the next couple weeks, and I'll be able to start doing live streams with just chatting. But in any case, that's going to be the Nintendo Direct with Lord, and I'm going to close it out there. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week and whatever. Keep chugging along, keep working, keep doing what you got to do, keep gaming. It's going to be Lord out.